Picture this: 30 days, no bath, and you're still cleaner than half your neighborhood. The streets are narrow, your clothes reek of smoke, and from a second floor, someone yells, "Gardy Lou!" The old, "Watch out below," before tossing a suspicious bucket. Well, in the next 15 minutes, you'll discover why the medieval stench was no joke. What's myth, what's reality, and what tricks they used just to survive the smell. Stick around till the end because I'll give you 3 visual keys to recognize, at a glance, what a medieval city truly smelled like. And a final detail that will forever change how you see a castle. Welcome to Lost History, where you learn without getting bored, with scenes you won't forget. So, what's at stake? Your nose and your survival. In a world with no modern sewers, no refrigeration, and with religion watching your habits, smell wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a map, an alarm, and also a status symbol. Following the smells told you where the market was, where they tanned hides, and above all, where you really didn't want to trip in the dark. Ignoring this means missing half of the Middle Ages. Bizarre laws, unsanitary baths, and perfumes made with what we now call questionable choices. In a moment, you'll find out why being too clean could look suspicious. Ever thought about that? And pay attention. Not all of Europe was the same. While in some regions, hot water was avoided for fear of opening the pores, in others, saunas and communal baths were kept alive. In short, the Middle Ages isn't a single nose, but a catalog of odors. Now imagine walking through the walled gate. Before you see, you smell. Dried sweat on wool, old fish, leather, damp wood smoke, manure, onions, and sun-baked urine. The floor is packed mud with straw that absorbs and never returns. Half a year of spills. The city breathes through its nose. First stop, the market. The butcher carves on blackened, well-used boards. The fat drips and runs toward the central gutter. A few steps away, the fishmonger cleans fish while gulls patrol like winged thieves. Did you know many cities banned throwing scraps onto the street? And yet, everyone kept doing it. The written rule didn't mean a fulfilled habit. Second stop, the tanner's workshop. Vats of lime, urine, and dog droppings to soften hides. The air stings your throat. If the city smells bad, this neighborhood plays in another league. The incredible part comes now. The trade stank so much it was usually placed outside the city center. Even so, the nearby river ended up smelling like ammonia with regrets. And we continue. The living traffic. Pigs, horses, and dogs act as an involuntary cleanup crew. Their gifts renew the perfume every hour. With thin-soled shoes, you feel absolutely everything. And finally, the narrow street. You walk pressed against the wall. Above, a window. You hear, "Watch the water." The bucket splashes you. You stand still, breathe through your mouth, and carry on. No one apologizes here. Quick question. What would you do in this situation? In a moment, you will see why many nobles smelled worse than a peasant with access to a river. At the start of the Middle Ages, there were still public baths inherited from Rome. Hot water, herbs, and gossip. But over time, fear arrived. It was believed that opening the pores meant letting in disease. So many closed, and others imposed absurd rules. No mixing sexes, no staying too long, no eating inside, though, spoiler, they ate inside anyway. The result was clear. Bathing rarely became a habit. Direct comparison. The peasant versus the noble. The peasant had the river handy. A quick dip after work and a linen shirt, washed with stone beating and ash. The noble, instead, wore silks and velvets that weren't washed. He perfumed himself and changed inner linens to absorb impurities. The result? Aromatic armor outside, archaeology inside. What if I told you the peasant by the river could smell better than a courtier wrapped in layers? This could change as you imagine at a palace ball. To recognize medieval hygiene in 5 seconds, memorize this pattern. Water, useful but feared. Bathing often was suspicious. Linen, a filter, not soap. The shirt absorbs the dirt. It's changed more than the robe is washed. Perfume, a cover-up. Pomanders, gloves, and oils that cover but don't eliminate. Express fact, smoke permeated everything. That's why so many chronicles speak of the smell of home as something inevitable. And let's not forget the mouth. Chewable twigs, salt, ash, herbs. Less sugar than today meant fewer cavities, yes, but worse breath thanks to onion, garlic, beer, and inflamed gums. Mini scene, a public bath. You enter early. Steam, rosemary, and out-of-tune loot. Yes, they ate inside the water. You leave clean and refreshed. You walk home. Suddenly, a neighbor looks at you suspiciously. Too clean. He must read books.
He probably reads
You learn that
books.
hygiene was also political. In the church and the monastery, incense burners swinging non-stop. The smoke lifted prayers. And by the way, it masked the odors of dozens of bodies in thick wool. Monks washed the soul more than the body. Unwashed habits were medals of humility. But here's the part almost nobody tells you. Some cloisters did have well-designed washrooms and bathing halls. The contradiction lived wall to wall. In the castle, toilets discharged into moats and pits. Some hung clothes nearby because the ammonia scared away moths. What if I told you that courtly glamour smelled as much of musk as of the moat? Imagine the scene. Music, perfumes, a banquet, quick cut to the outer wall with smelly drafts. Nobody commented. The castle was beautiful until you turned on your nose. The barber surgeon. He shaved, bled, and pulled teeth in a room smelling of iron. The red and white pole is born from that. Blood and bandages, myth and reality. They weren't improvised butchers. Many were skilled. But with no germ theory, their limit was their sense of smell. The plague. The plague turned the city into a scented panic. Smoke, quicklime, sealed houses, beak masks filled with herbs, perfumery with faith. Uncomfortable fact. It was believed a good aroma protected from bad air. Solution, more cloves, more rosemary, more incense. Result, brief relief, and back to the stench. Perfume and class. Silver pomanders with cloves, ambergris, perfumed gloves, smoked rooms. The war of status was fought in the nose. And here comes the final twist. Smell as a social frontier. The rich smelled of expensive spices over sweat. The poor of river and smoke. Everyone, without exception, smelled of the Middle Ages. Quick question. If you closed your eyes in a hall, could you distinguish rank by smell? The nose that gives up. You grow up in this, and your brain turns the volume down. You only perceive the extreme. A wound, an old well, a closed house. Habit was the most powerful deodorant. Sensory mini-essay. First month in the city, you cry. By the third, you breathe through your mouth. By the sixth, you distinguish nuances. Today, the market smells sweeter. Today, the tannery, stronger. You've now graduated in the medieval smell. And, of course, there were seasons. In winter, the cold, muted odors. In summer, the sun amplified them. And yes, the rains mixed everything into a democratic soup. We can conclude that 3 great forces governed the medieval smell. An urbanism without pipes that turned streets into virtual latrines. Second, the fear, or rather, the respect for water that transformed the act of bathing into something rare and even suspicious. And third, religion and status, which dictated when it was decent to wash and when not. If you want to recognize this world just by looking at a scene, there are 3 visual keys that never fail. The first is the infrastructure. A street with a central channel and loose animals means You are smelling with your eyes. The second is the water culture. If the bath appears as a special event and linen is changed more than the cloak, cleanliness is not routine. It's a negotiation with fear. And the third is status and the mask. Scented pomanders, perfumed gloves, and spices on dubious meat. A whole olfactory theater where the stench didn't disappear. It was simply disguised. In summary, the city was a nasal orchestra where each trade played its particular note. Linen, a human filter that absorbed yesterday's dirt to survive today. And perfume, a social armor. Beauty against the air, but not against germs. But beware of the myth. Not everyone was always filthy, nor did the idea of a daily bath exist. There were living saunas in the north, convents with well-kept washrooms, and riverside villages cleaner than some palaces. The problem was never laziness. The real problem was the structure. If you like these immersions where you learn without getting bored, like and subscribe to Lost History. Every day, a historical journey with scenes you won't forget.